Thank you so much, Rajni. Thank you, everyone. So, thank you for the nice presentation. The intersection of culture and mental health. And today, that's what I will be exploring. It's mental health through the lens of human potential and culture. So, today I'm coming with my hat or cap, sorry, of coach consultant in potential human potential development, wherein my lenses of language and culture studies. So we'll be looking at how culture shapes the way we perceive, express, and cope with mental health challenges in the workplace. I'm going to focus more on the workplace, as what I'm going to present is more reflections coming from my observations during training and coaching session. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thought and reflections on this subject. So my presentation, as I said, is a personal reflection. So there is no factual science based on it. So it's just drawn from my experience. And I'm going to start with the first confusion that I hear a lot is mental health and well-being. These are terms we hear more and more in HR departments and corporate settings. But the question is, are they a trend, a need, or an obligation? That's the question. So through this lens, I'll share 5 key insights from my field experience. They are 5, let me call them moments of reflection on how culture shapes the way we understand, express, and especially support mental health at work. So basically, the outline of my presentation is going to be on 3 parts. The first part's in how cultural beliefs shape perception, vulnerability, and emotional expression at work. Then shedding light on language and how words influence the understanding and the path to healing also. And of course, talking about going beyond stigma to creating spaces for recovery and authenticity in the workplace. So um, let me start with the trigger. What triggered me to jot down these 5 insights and to think about them? The triggers are, as I said, experience, and I cannot hide it. Like in every coaching session, I'm reminded that mental health isn't just about the mind, it is about meaning. So, and meaning here in the workplace is always filtered through culture. It's always perceived, interpreted, understood through cultural perspective. So behind every conversations about performance, there is a kind of invisible story, that human story of how we cope, how we connect and care while trying to deliver, to manage, to lead, and even to belong to the company or to the group or to the team. So through my work with the professionals and leaders across diverse organizations, I've seen how cultural lens profoundly shapes the way we experience and talk about mental health. So I've noticed how differently people define human experiences. So, for example, what feels like vulnerability for one person, it might feel like dignity for another. And what looks like calm, or what we call calm professionalism in one culture, it could be also interpreted as emotional distance in some other context. So all these differences show up every day in meetings, in emails, and even in silence. Silence has different interpretation in this cross-cultural world and multicultural teams. So this influence how people deal with and express their stress, the way they ask for help, or even simply showing up as themselves. So let's start with one reflection. I'm trying to move to the second slide, and here to ground the idea, uh, I'm going to ask a very simple question. So this is a question that we ask and answer every day. How are you? How are you doing? What's up? Are you okay? But at the end of the day, what does being okay really mean? And who gets to define it? So I'd like to take the example of how we often to respond this in my culture with the Tunisian dialect. So in one of my coaching sessions, I asked the client how she was feeling. She smiled and she said, I'm okay. But her tone told a completely different story. So I proceeded and asked her, okay, so what do you mean by okay? She said, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah in Arabic means I thank God. And that's one of the most common answers when it comes to this question. I digged a little bit deeper into what she meant. So my goal was trying to make her connect with her internal feelings and emotion. And then she said, simply, I've learned to always say that, no matter what. Like for her, doesn't matter if she's good or not good. What matters is always saying that, Alhamdulillah, thank God for everything. And then she added that speaking up wouldn't it change anything. So why would she tell me how she was feeling or speaking up about that? So that moment stayed with me, and this reminded me how easily gratitude and endurance, undoubtedly, these are both beautiful values, beautiful traits, but they can coexist with silence and emotional fatigue as well. So, and here comes my very first insight of this presentation, is that mental health is never neutral. It's always filtered through culture, through what we were taught to express or to hide. I'll dig a little bit deeper into culture and into the language. So I would say that because when we start noticing these subtle responses, we realize that mental health is not just psychological, it's cultural. And it's shaped by how our communities teach us to deal with discomfort, with expression, with disclosure, and strength. So in some cultures, being okay simply means you keep going. You don't show up your struggles. You don't stop. You don't even look at your struggles. You don't look at your sufferings. You keep going. So, and here are some of the replies to this question in my culture. So many people, I don't know, out of modesty, limited emotional vocabulary, or just a wish to avoid appearing vulnerable, they would respond with a sentence like, كيف الناس. كيف الناس means in Tunisian Arabic, like everyone else. That's an answer. How are you doing? Like everyone else. Or another expression, خير من الناس وأقل من الناس. I translate that. Better than some, worse than others. So how are you doing? Better than some, worse than others. Look at the language. Look how deep this is. So these expressions sound harmless, even polite, but they reveal something deeper. How cultural norms teach us to minimize our emotions, to downplay our struggles, and blend in rather than open up. And perhaps what they also do is suppress the personal experience. You know, that journey of navigating emotions and healings, it's a whole journey. So when we measure our state against others, or when we silence our feelings to appear strong, we lose touch with what's truly happening within. And here comes my second reflection. So the first one is that mental health, it's not neutral, it's filtered through culture. The first insight or reflection is that mental health, it's not about comparison. It's about connection, and this connection is with ourselves first. So this brings me to the next idea. It's that distinction, this distinction between comparison to others and connection with oneself often reminds me of a confusion I frequently encounter during meetings with HR professionals, like training needs analysis sessions with HR departments. It's that confusion between mental health and well-being when setting their strategies, when drafting their yearly training programs. So these two terms are often used interchangeably, yet they refer to different dimensions of the same human experience. And when it comes to improving mental health at work, that's a topic now at the center of every organizational conversation. I think that not knowing the distinction, it's like setting out a journey without a destination. So you end up nowhere. That's really very important to know that distinction. So let me take a moment quickly to shed some light on this difference. So mental health, it's more about how we think, how we feel, how we cope. So it is a kind of an internal dialogue that shapes our confidence, focus, and resilience, as we talked about resilience. So it is a kind of an inner space. Whenever I get the chance to use a metaphor, I compare mental health to the engine and well-being to the journey. Because well-being, on the other hand, it's more about that outer expression of that balance. It is how we live, how we relate and sustain ourselves over time. So I often say mental health enables performance, but what sustains it is well-being. So we need to be a bit clear about that. Let's take an example from the workplace. So having, for example, fitness programs, great offices, and those yoga sessions that we see more and more nowadays in the workplace, it's fine, it's good. But if people don't feel safe saying, I'm not okay, then what we call well-being remains incomplete. Because true well-being begins when mental health is valued and not managed. So I think that the real blockage to well-being and mental health is that desire to manage them rather than to value and understand them. And that's where culture comes in. It's because culture defines and it shapes what being okay even means. So I will move to the first, sorry, I did not, and here we go. That's the first part of the presentation that is split into 4 parts. So the first one, I'm going to give more importance to the culture with real examples from multicultural environments. So here, every organization, it has its culture, but within it, each of us bring a micro culture shaped by our upbringing, our nationality, our values and family stories. And those layers, those what I call invisible rules, influence how we express emotions, how we handle conflicts also, cope, or even showing confidence. So they define what people consider as professional, unprofessional, correct, not incorrect, emotional, or acceptable, non-acceptable. So let me give you an example of how these invisible rules play out in real life. So in one of my multinational team I coached, I noticed that during a kind of a tough situation, I would call it, I noticed that the manager's calm silence during that situation was interpreted very differently. So one colleague saw it as indifference. The other one, he saw it as wisdom, as a strength, as professionalism. So the same goes for sadness, for anger. Silence can signal respect, but for other, it could be mistaken for disengagement. Sadness, it could be a shared collectively, or in some cultures, in some contexts, internalized. Anger, also, it could be considered as strength or disrespect. So depends on the context, depends on the cultural background. So here the workplace becomes a mirror of all these differences. So what is considered a normal between parentheses behavior in one culture, it may seem cold in another or even too emotional in a third. So before labeling a behavior as normal or abnormal, I think we need to just stop and ask, is it a truly personal or simply cultural? So the second part of the presentation or observation turns around the stigma and emotional expression. So mental health stigma exists in every culture, despite different ways, but still it does exist. It just wears different forms. So in many corporate environments, we glorify resilience, but we rarely create space for recovery. We applaud those who push through, but hesitate when someone pauses to breathe. Like, what is he doing or what are they doing? So I've coached brilliant leaders and managers who could talk very easily about quarterly results, about new technologies, about fancy topics, and even complicated metaphysical subjects. Yet they found it almost impossible to say, I'm exhausted, I am tired. So they would struggle just to say, I'm not okay today. And that was, or that is, my third insight of today, is that mental health is not universal. That's a myth. Mental health has different faces, and we need to understand each face in its context and in within the dynamic. So the root cause, another example about mental health and how it is seen or how it is perceived. Mental health in some cultures equates spiritual weakness, and that's very, very common. And I hear a lot these comments when a person express their kind of lack of ease or uncomfort or mental illness or struggles. So it is interpreted as a lack of faith, lack of spiritual practices like prayers, like mantra, or any other form of connection to the spiritual world or to the superpower or to God, Allah, what we call. So here, it's kind of linking mental illness to shame or to loss of honor. And this is doubled when it concerns a woman, when a woman is struggling, is the subject of the struggle. So the root cause beneath these behaviors is perception. Some more examples. When it comes to emotional openness, it is often mistaken for fragility. So those who speak up their struggles, they are fragile, they are weak. So they need to work further on their character. They lack character. Silence, though, it's rewarded as wisdom, as professionalism. We have some cultures also equate expressing emotion with authenticity versus weakness or lack of authenticity. Seeking therapy in itself, it could be considered as a weakness, as a lack of self understanding. in some other contexts is considered as self-care. So you see, like we have different really, we need to look at the topic from different angles. So the message we often send in the workplace is subtle but clear. It's okay to optimize performance, but not to acknowledge your struggles, not to talk about your pain, not to show your stress. You have to hide, not even to manage. It's about hiding, it's about camouflaging, no matter how you are really doing. So that's the paradox. We celebrate resilience, and yet we hesitate to make room for vulnerability. But mental health at work isn't just about how well you cope as an individual, it's about that collective permission to be human. It's to embrace your humanity. So when people feel safe to say, I'm not okay without fear, like the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, or any kind of consequence, that's when true well-being begins. So as I often say in global companies, we often train teams to communicate better, but I rarely see in their training a program or potential development strategy how to feel better together. And that's also important. And that brings me to another layer of this conversation, which is language. And here we go. That's my best part, to be honest, because the biggest part of observation wasn't this part. It's about how we use language. So language, mental health, and healing. Why it's important? I want to highlight this. The way we speak about our emotions, the way we speak about our suffering and struggles deeply shapes the way we experience them. I say it again. The way we speak about our emotions, struggles, sufferings shapes the way we experience them. And here, where language plays a huge role in influencing mental health. So the question here, how does it affect, I mean, not just how we express ourselves, but how we understand what we feel? And I can share two lessons in this part, like two outcomes of this observation. The first one is that what we cannot name, what we cannot give a name, we cannot heal. We need to understand what we are going through, name our emotional experience or our struggle, to validate it, and then to embark on that journey of healing. When we cannot name what we feel, we deny its existence, and sometimes we even turn it into something shameful, something invalid. So language both empower or limit the way we express those struggles like distress, sadness, anger. In some cultures, there isn't even a direct word for depression or burnout. That's the example of my culture. No exact term for that. And most of the terms we use, they are negative attributes, like a person who lost his mind, who even who lost his life, to say that the person is going through a depression. So people would internalize their emotional experiences as failures. Others describe anxiety as just simply a heavy heart or a blocked energy. And sometimes the way we talk about emotions can even reflect what we believe about them. I give you an example of an engineer that I once coached. He told me that saying I'm tired means I'm lazy. So I would never say that. I would never say that I'm tired. That sentence stayed with me. And in our work together, we tried to reframe it into something new. I am human and recovery is part of excellence. I need a break. to refill, let's say, my energy tank. And sometimes the first step toward well-being is rewriting the story we tell ourselves, to be able to deal with the stories that others, that our environment are telling us. The second lesson, I like this one. It's also it has to do with the cultural beliefs that we use to explain mental illnesses or unbalanced mental health. When words are missing, beliefs fill the space. And this lesson or this observation came to my mind when I was watching a program about fortune tellers and about the spiritual healers that are the kind of potential solution to many people who struggle with their mental health. So interpretation, it's true that they can bring comfort, but also they can stand in the way of healing. In my culture, for example, and in many other cultures, psychological distress or emotional suffering isn't always recognized as an internal experience. It's often externalized and explained through ideas like the evil eye, the magic, the negative energy, the contact, the devil contact. So we have many different expressions or explanation for what is not going with us emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. So these interpretations, it's true that they can offer comfort, because they provide another meaning or another different narrative for something we cannot control. So it gives us the illusion that we are controlling through our understanding of what is it exactly. But so that's a personal understanding, let's say. They can also create distance from the self. That's what kind of fuel my observation, because this delays self-awareness and hence it delays healing as well. So when we see pain as something done to us rather than something happening within us, we make healing really kind of more difficult to embark in, because we lose that chance to listen, to connect to ourselves, to reflect and to grow. I like this thought. So when pain is seen as an enemy outside, we stop listening to the voice inside, let's say. So, and these are cultural beliefs. Some of the cultural beliefs I was talking about, the evil eye, the black magic or the magic, the negative energy. And then we go to those spiritual people to tell us what is it exactly, which of these explanation relate with my experience. The fourth and the last, no, not the last, but before the last part of the presentation is with regards to cultural humility in multicultural workplaces. So misunderstandings around mental health happens all the time. It's normal. Whenever we have diversity, there are misunderstandings about certain things. So people often interpret behaviors through their own cultural fears. I remember once during the annual feedback sessions, one of the managers that I'm working with, he has a direct personality, and this was reflected even in the way he gives feedback. So he was more of a manager who gives direct feedback. So some of his team members, they saw this as empowering to them, but some others, they considered it as very aggressive. So the polite refusals, they could be interpreted as indecisiveness in one culture, but respect in another. So even silence, it carries multiple meanings like wisdom, disengagement, respect. So behind these reactions often lies unspoken emotional experience, be it stress, rejection, judgment, all those kind of fears, or simply different coping mechanism. So at its core, these are not just communication gaps, they are what I call emotional gaps. And here comes my first insight of today is that mental health isn't only personal, but it's interactional. It shows up in how we listen, communicate, lead, and interpret each other or interact with each others. And this is where cultural humility becomes essential. It is, I would say, it's not about pretending to know everything. That's impossible. It's rather about understanding each and everyone. It's about staying curious. It's about willing to understand. And it's being about being open to learning from everyone. So, as coaches and leaders and managers, we don't need to have all the answers to everything. We just need to hold space for differences. So, this mindset expands our understanding of empathy from being just a skill to being just to being a stance. So, empathy is not just a skill, but it is a stance. It is your choice where to stand. What if we just paused and rethought what empathy truly means, not as something we do, but as something we become? And this reflection really matters because in most corporate and coaching programs, the focus is on helping people communicate better, how to give feedback, how to speak up, how to present with impact. But we rarely teach people how to listen differently. Yet, it's through that kind of listening that is deep, that is curious, that is judgment free, that empathy moves from being a soft skills to becoming a real a leadership stance. And once we begin to listen differently, something shifts. It's our focus moves from convincing to connecting. And you see that photo here. It kind of inspires connection. Cultural humility, my own definition for it is that accepting that your perspective is not the only one and that silence does not always mean agreement. Emotion does not always mean a weakness. So in coaching, I've learned this that humility is not about lowering yourself. It's about lifting the other person's experience long enough to see the world through their eyes. So, isn't that what true leadership is? It's the courage to listen beyond words, especially in today's global and cross cultural world. I don't know if time permits, so I can share with you four of the tools I use in my cross cultural leadership sessions. What do you think, Rajni?
Amira, actually, we are running a bit of short of time, but
So I
if
will
time
say,
permit, then we will definitely invite you again to share
yeah,
those insights. We are very interested listening to that, provided we have time. So I hope you understand.
yes, definitely. So I will close just with the fifth and last insight and keep the tools probably for later. So as I want to begin to listen differently, something powerful happens. We start to see differently too. And the last, let's say, the last insight is what when it comes to the people, when they feel seen, they no longer perform out of pressure. That's what I observed in the workplace. So they start to contribute out of purpose. I will skip this part and go straight to the fifth and last insight from my work with professionals in a multicultural environment is that mental health is not a weakness, it's rather a window into our humanity. So I will just end quickly with this thought is that understanding difference, that's where leadership truly begins. And because listening across culture is not just about empathy. That's what I hear a lot. It's true. Part of it goes to empathy, but also to leadership, to true leadership. So thank you again for offering me the possibility to share my insights.